Hi boys and girls, Miss Queen here. We're ready to start reading and annotating chapter 17. Remember boys and girls that if you are using my book, you should be annotating on stickies. But if you're using your own book, then you can most definitely highlight and write in your book with our annotations. Okay, so chapter 17, let's open up to page 103.
Chapter 17, Southern Sudan, 2009. What do you think we are building here? Nya's father asked, smiling. A house? Nya guessed. Or a barn? Her father shook his head. Something better, he said. A school. Nya's eyes widened. The nearest school was half a day's walk from their home. Nya knew this because Deb had wanted to go there, but it was too far. A school? She echoed. Yes, he replied. With the well here, no one will have to go to the pond anymore. So all the children will be able to go to school. Nya stared at her father. Her mouth opened, but no words came out.
Okay, so think about how she's feeling, right? She's definitely feeling a type of way, knowing that there's going to be a school being built. So I'm going to highlight some things here. Her eyes widened. Let's see what else. She's staring at her father, right? Her mouth opened, but no words came out. So it definitely sounds like she is interested and she's almost in disbelief, right? She doesn't believe that this is happening. Do you think she's excited about it being a school? Think about that. Let's annotate that. What do you guys think? We're making a prediction, right? It's really not clear to us. I truly love my think bubble. Let's write down what you think. Do you think she is excited about a school being built near where she lives? Or do you think she feels some other type of way? Write that down.
When at last she was able to speak, it was only in a whisper. All the children, Papa? The girls, too? Her father's smile grew broader. Yes, Nya, girls, too, he said. Now go and fetch water for us. And he returned to his work, scything the long grass.
Okay, notice that she's in shock that girls too will go to school. So remember, as we were reading, we learned that a lot of the girls were not allowed to go to school because they had to fetch water, right? Help their families, and mostly just the boys went to school. We remember this also from Salva's part of the story. So it's interesting that now all the children will be able to go to school, right? Girls included. And most likely it's because now that they have the well, they're able to get water. So the girls don't have to spend all their time going to fetch water. They'll actually be able to go to school. So that's pretty interesting. I'm going to put an exclamation mark there. I think that's pretty important, and it's shocking to see how excited she is, right? The fact that she'll be able to go to school. Okay, let's continue on the next page.
Nya went back and picked up the plastic can. She felt as if she were flying. School. She would learn to read and write.
All right, so this paragraph here, or these two paragraphs here, right, definitely shows us how she's feeling. Let's highlight that. Let's highlight she felt as if she were flying. Is she really flying? No, but it's definitely showing us how she's feeling. She's definitely excited, right? So let's write that down. So Naya is excited about going to school. She is looking forward to it. Oops. Okay, I'm going to make that smaller so that you can see that better. Okay, so she's definitely excited. She's feeling like she's flying. So she's definitely looking forward to going to school. And the fact that she's going to be able to learn how to read and write. I don't know about you, but I think I need to put a heart next to this because I just love the fact that, remember guys, I'm using a mouse, so my heart's not perfect, but yours could be perfect. So I love the fact how that she's so excited about learning to read and write. You know how Miss Klunia feels about that. All right, let's move on to Salva's section of the story.
Sudan and Rochester, New York, 2003 to 2007. Salva stood at the foot of one of the beds in the crowded clinic. "Hello," he said. "Hello," the patient replied politely. "I have come to visit you," Salva said. "To visit me?" The man frowned. "But who are you?" "You are Mawien Dut Arik, aren't you?" "Yes, that is my name." Salva smiled, his insides trembling. Even though his father looked older now, Salva had recognized him right away. But it was as if his eyes needed help from his ears. He needed to hear his father's words to believe he was real.
All right, so let's highlight a couple things here. Notice how, first of all, it's interesting to us when we see that when Salva gets to his father, right, to the clinic where his father doesn't know who he is, right? Why do you think he doesn't know who he is? Well, we know that this is many, many years later, right? Salva hasn't seen his father in so many years. And the last time he saw his father, remember, he was 11, right? So he's definitely looking different. He is obviously an adult now. He's more mature. So his father doesn't realize who he is. Notice how Salva asks him if, who he is, and that is his name. So he knows, he's certain that that's his father, but he still needs his father to tell him that he's his father, right? In order for it to seem real to him. Notice how Salva is feeling, right? When he's talking to his father. I'm going to highlight that in a different color just so we can see it. So it says, Salva smiled, his insides trembling. So he's smiling. When we see someone smile, it obviously means that they feel good, right? But his insides trembling. What does that mean? It's almost like he's nervous in a way. So he's having mixed emotions. He's happy that he's finally face to face with his father, but he's also worried, right? What is happening? Of course, remember, if he's in a hospital or if he's in a clinic, he's not doing well. So he's also worried, right, about what will be of his father and what's to come. So let's annotate that. So Salva is happy to see his father. Let me just make this smaller so you guys can see it better. So Salva is happy to see his father, but he is also scared. I'm going to put this in a different color so it stands out for you guys. Okay. And this goes together with that, what we highlighted here, right? He smiled, but his insides were trembling. All right, let's continue.
"I am your son. I am Salva." The man looked at Salva and shook his head. "No," he said. "It is not possible." "Yes," Salva said. "It's me, father." He moved to the side of the bed. Mawien Dut reached out and touched the arm of this tall stranger beside him. "Salva," he whispered. "Can it really be you?"
So notice how his father's obviously also not sure if it's really Salva because he hasn't seen him for so many years, right? So just like Salva was unsure if his father was alive, vice versa. His father was also unsure that Salva was alive.
Salva waited. Dut stared for a long moment. Then he cried out, "Salva! My son! My son!" His body shaking with sobs of joy, he reached up to hug Salva tightly.
All right, can we talk about this figurative language? Let's do a different color figurative language. His body shaking with sobs of joy. So when something is sobbing, it's like crying, right? Does your body cry? No. So what is that an example of? Personification. And we also know that it's personification because, and it basically, remember that when authors use personification, it's a type of figurative language that takes something that is non-human and it gives it human characteristics. Our bodies don't cry, right? But the author is basically saying how, in this case, because he's sobbing joy, right? Sobs of joy. So it's showing us how excited he is, right? To realize that it's his son and that his son is alive.
It had been almost 19 years since they had last seen each other. Dut sprinkled water on his son's head, the Dinka way of blessing someone who is lost and is found again. "Everyone was sure you were dead," Dut said. "The village wanted to kill a cow for you." That was how Salva's people mourned the death of a loved one.
All right, so let's talk about this. Remember that obviously this they're from Sudan, right? From a country that maybe does certain things that we're not familiar with, right? They have a different type of culture. So in these paragraphs here, this is obviously something cultural that Salva and his family or the people in his village do. So in order to mourn or to kind of pay their respects to someone that they lost, they kill a cow, right, for that person. And also another example of a type of a cultural thing that they do is also to sprinkle water on someone's head, right, as to like blessing someone. So it's a little similar to maybe what some of us might know of, right, based on your culture or your religion. But this is just an example of their culture. So let's write that down. Examples. Let's change that so you can see. Actually, let's do this. Examples of Salva's culture. Okay, let's continue.
"I would not let them," his father said. "I never gave up hope that you are still alive somewhere." And my mother?" Salva asked, barely daring to hope. His father smiled. "She is back in the village."
Okay, so this is so important. Remember how Salva, even though he was unsure that his father and his family were alive, he never lost hope. And neither did his father. See, that when the father says that he didn't allow the people in the village to kill the cow for him. So it's almost telling us that his father, just like Salva, never lost hope that they would meet again. Okay, let's continue on the next page.
Salva wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. "I must see her." But his father shook his head. "There is still war near Lonarik, my son. If you went there, both sides would try to force you to fight with them. You must not go." There was so much more to talk about. His father told Salva that his sisters were with his mother, but of his 3 brothers, only Ring had survived the war. Arik, the oldest, and Quol, the youngest, were both dead.
All right, so we're getting to find out a lot of information about Salva's family, right? Who survived, who didn't. So in this paragraph here, I'm just going to highlight this. So we do know that his mother is alive, right? And his sisters as well, but only one of his brothers survived the war. So I think that throughout the chapters, there were a couple of references to his brothers, right? And how much he looked up to them. So I'm pretty sure that he's feeling very upset or very sad that his brothers didn't make it, or at least just one of his brothers did. And then we also know here, this is pretty important. Notice his father doesn't allow him to go see his mother, right? He says that there is still war in their village. So remember, it's been so many years that Salva has left Southern Sudan, and there is still war going on. So remember, we mentioned this, how it was a non-ending war. This is proof of that. The fact that he can't go back and see his mother because of the war, and it's still happening. And if he goes there, they're gonna make him fight, right? Join the army and fight for them.
Little Quo. Salva closed his eyes for a few moments, trying to picture his brothers through a haze of time and grief. He learned more about his father's illness. Years of drinking contaminated water had left Muiandut's entire digestive system riddled with guinea worms. Sick and weak, he had walked almost 300 miles to come to this clinic, and was barely alive by the time he finally arrived.
All right, so we find out what is wrong with his dad. Okay, so let's just bracket this out. And I'm going to highlight something, and I want you to tell me, based on what I'm highlighting, do you think that Salva and his father are alike? So it says sick and weak. He had walked almost 300 miles to come to this clinic, and he was barely alive by the time he finally arrived. Do you think they follow the same or have the same character traits? Definitely, right? So let's write this down. So Salva and his father are alike. They are both strong and determined. Okay, and this definitely proves that. Oh, let me make that later. Sorry, guys. There you go. I'm going to make this smaller so that we can see, and then we'll continue. All right, let's continue.
Salva and his father had several days together, but all too soon, it was time for Salva to return to America. His father would be leaving the clinic shortly as well. The surgery he had undergone had been successful, and he would soon be strong enough to make the long walk home.
All right, so his father did get better, right? So Salva stayed there for quite some time with his father, and the surgery he had was successful, right? It was good, and he was now able to walk back home.
I will come to the village, Salva promised, as soon as it is safe. We will be there waiting for you, his father promised in turn. Salva pressed his face tightly to his father's as they hugged goodbye, their tears flowing and blending together. On the plane back to the United States, Salva replayed in his mind every moment of his visit with his father. He felt again the coolness on his brow when his father had sprinkled the water blessing on him.
Okay, I'm going to just stop here for a minute. I want to go back to this paragraph we just read. So notice how Salva makes a promise to his dad that he will be back to the village. I want you to think of, we don't have to annotate it yet because you're going to see that this is going to be a question you're going to answer later on. I want you to think of why Salva makes this promise. Why does Salva want to go back to his village? Besides obviously wanting to see his family again, think of another way or another reason why he might want to go back.
And an idea came to him. An idea of what he might be able to do to help the people of Sudan. Could he do it? It would take so much work. Perhaps it would be too difficult. But how would he know unless he tried?
Let's make a prediction. So our think bubble, what do you think the idea is that he's having. And I also want you to highlight this because this is really important. So he has an idea of how to help his people, which could perhaps be an answer to the question that I asked before, right? Why he might want to go back. So why do you think, or what do you think he's going to do to help his people? What might be his idea? Make a prediction right now.
Back in Rochester, Salva began working on his idea. There were, it seemed, a million problems to be solved. He needed a lot of help. Chris and Louise gave him many suggestions. Scott, a friend of theirs, was an expert in setting up projects like the one Salva had in mind. He and Salva worked together for hours and days, which grew into weeks and months.
Notice another sign of his determination, right? So he's working on this project. We don't know what it is yet. We'll find out maybe soon. And it's taking him, he's working on this project hours and days, right? Which again just adds to that trait that he's so determined to doing something he wants.
Along the way, Salva met other people who wanted to help. He was grateful to all of them. But even with their help, it was much more work than he had imagined. Salva had to raise money for the project, and there was only one way to do this. He would have to talk to people and ask them to give money. The first time Salva spoke in front of an audience was in a school cafeteria. About 100 people had come to hear him. There was a microphone at the front of the room. Salva's knees were shaking as he walked to the mic. He knew that his English was still not very good. What if he made mistakes in pronunciation? What if the audience couldn't understand him? But he had to do it. If he didn't talk about the project, no one would learn about it. No one would donate money, and he would never be able to make it work. Salva spoke into the microphone. "Hello," he said. At that moment, something went wrong with the sound system. The speakers behind him let out a dreadful screech. Salva jumped and almost dropped the mic. His hands trembling, he looked out at the audience. People were smiling or chuckling. A few of the children were holding their ears. They all looked very friendly, and seeing the children made him remember. It was not the first time he had spoken in front of a large group of people. Years before, when he was leading those boys on their walk from the Ethiopian refugee camp to the one in Kenya, he had called a meeting every morning and evening. The boys would line up facing him, and he would talk to them about their plans. All those eyes looking at him, but every face interested in what he had to say. It was the same here. The audience had come to the school cafeteria because they wanted to hear him. Thinking of that made him feel a little better, and he spoke into the mic again. "Hello," he repeated, and this time only his own voice came from the speakers. He smiled in relief and went on. "I am here to talk to you about a project for Southern Sudan." A year passed, then 2, then 3.
All right, so notice, boys and girls, that these 2 pages here that we just heard, we know that this idea that Salva is having to help his people in Sudan obviously is going to take a lot of determination and a lot of hard work. So he had to spread the word in order to get donations, right, to raise money to help him with this project. We don't know what his project is just yet, okay? But I want you to think of in your mind, does anyone have any ideas of what this project might be? Do you think your prediction on the previous page is correct, or do you want to change it? What do you think? Think about it in your mind. Now notice that here, a year passed, then 2, then 3, right? So like we said, it takes a lot of determination, right, to go ahead with a plan that you might have, especially if it's a difficult plan, just like Salva's might be. So it took him 3 years, right? So 3 years later.
Salva spoke to hundreds of people, in churches, at civic organizations, in schools? Would he ever be able to turn his idea into reality? Whenever he found himself losing hope, Salva would take a deep breath and think of his uncle's words. A step at a time. One problem at a time. Just figure out this one problem. Day by day, solving one problem at a time, Salva moved toward his goal.
Okay, so notice, boys and girls, that this is like a flashback in a sense, right? Where he's thinking back to his uncle and his words, a step at a time. In this case, now it's a problem at a time, right? It's not going to be easy for him to reach his goal of this project that he might have. But I want you to annotate something. We're going to make a thought here. So my question to you is, will Salva, you don't have to copy this question, but I'm just going to write it down so that you can refer back to it. Will Salva reach his goal of accomplishing his project? Okay, I want you to answer that question here. So will he accomplish his goal of, accomplishing or succeeding in the project that he has? Okay, so we will continue reading the next chapter, and notice it's the last chapter of the book, right? We'll do that tomorrow. Have a great day, boys and girls.